And about it, you have a harrying experience?
I've had a few. That as tour director, we're faced with all sorts of challenges, and it's what I love about the job. We have accidents, as I'm sure you could imagine. Riders crash, and passports get lost, and people take wrong turns and get lost for a couple hours. I guess it was 2 years ago on the Orient Express, the one in Europe. We had our oldest ever participant, a gentleman from Bend, Oregon, actually, I believe is where he's from, or Eugene, Oregon. He's a really nice old man. He was 86 years old, and he was going to try to go from Paris to Istanbul on his bike with us. And he was extremely slow and was having a really hard time on the trip, but he was also really headstrong and extremely positive, and was loving it. And unfortunately, about 2 or 3 weeks into the trip, he had a very serious fall and was hit by a vehicle. He sustained some pretty bad injuries, and I was quite shocked. And I had to kind of jump into action and make sure he got to the hospital quickly. And he was treated and eventually airlifted home a week or so later. The German doctors did an excellent job. He was in some pretty serious shape for the first, I'd say, hour or two. It was touch and go. It was pretty scary. So for a guy who's 86 years old, I figured that's it. He's never going to walk again. That's the end of his story, and I feel terrible. But amazingly, I've exchanged some letters with him since, and he was in a rehabilitation clinic for months and months, and in the last letter I got from him a few months ago, he said he had taken his first steps, and his goal was to be taking his first pedal strokes on his bike again by the end of this summer. So it was completely amazing to me. I didn't think he'd ever walk again. So,
well, let's hope he's doing well.
Yeah.
Well, the way you ended up coming on Live from the Heartland was I received a notice about the film that was at Columbia College last night, Where Are You Go? And this film was part of the Bicycle Film Festival.
That's right.
And last year we had the honor of seeing the film Clunkers and having Gary Fisher show up on our show. Gary Fisher being a famed early mountain bike guy, maybe the inventor of the mountain bike. There's some discussion about that. Mm-hmm. And he's an interesting character. Let's go to the film festival, and let's go to the film that you are involved with called Where Are You Go?
Sure. Where Are You Go was done during the 2008 Tour d'Afrique. It was done by Benny and Christian Zenga and their friend Brian Werner, who Benny and Christian had done some short films before, and Brian had done one full-length documentary before. So they had met one of our staff in Toronto at the Film Fest the year before, and the idea came together for them to come on the tour and film the tour. Last night was my first opportunity to see the film as well. I wasn't directly involved with the making of the film, and it was fantastic. They did a great job for to do their first full-length documentary. They pulled it together, and they had some stunning footage from the tours. Yeah.
And how was it received last night?
Very well. I would guess that there was probably around 200 people in the theater at Columbia College, and a very rambunctious crowd, and had lots of questions for me after the film.
And sooner or later we'll be able to get it on Netflix or some other way. How could someone get a hold of this film?
Yeah, as it is right now, it's just making its way around the Film Fest circuit. It's hitting a few more cities in the States and also overseas. And then the plan is to turn it into a DVD. So for people who are interested to get a copy of it, I think the best thing to do would be to sort of follow it on our website, and we'll be updating people with that.
Shanny Hill, I'd like to ask you certainly a few more questions about the Tour d'Afrique, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about how you got involved in Tour d'Afrique and your own history as an athlete, as a bicyclist, as a humanitarian, etc.
Sure. Well, I think, as I mentioned, I've always been into cycling ever since I was quite young, and when I was just about to finish up high school, I had decided that I guess I really didn't want to go to college and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so I decided that I was going to be a a tour leader. I'm going to go with Butterfield and Robinson or one of the big tour companies and lead bicycle tours at 17 years old. So I sent a bunch of applications and letters to all these outfits in the U.S. and elsewhere applying for the job, and they all said thank you very much, but I don't think you're ready for that yet. And so it started very early that I was interested in these sort of trips and leading trips. And I came to Toronto from my hometown a couple years later and did go to college and eventually found my way into Duke Cycle, which is a big bike shop in Toronto.
Duke Cycle.
Duke Cycle, and spent 5 years there as a shop manager, and it was a good learning experience for me, but it wasn't quite where I wanted to be. And then I eventually met Henry Gold, who was a customer at the store, and he told me about his Tour d'Afrique trips, and that was in 2005, and I was instantly fascinated with that, and at that stage I had never been to Africa and had really wanted to travel there, so the timing all seemed right, and so I started bugging him enough that he gave me a part-time job in the office, and eventually started working full-time for the company.